But at
Yeah.
the same time, to your point, right before we actually went on air, you brought up a great point that Brian Cashman should be pretty motivated to get this done. Whether it be Juan Soto or Shohei Ohtani, he's not getting anything done right now in terms of winning, which Hal Steinbrenner earlier this year, if I'm sure you remember, he went on live television and said, I don't understand why everyone's upset. We're winning baseball games, and I feel like the postseason is a crapshoot. Well, the New York Yankees are no longer winning baseball games. They're in fourth place. That's unacceptable, obviously. So now you can't use winning regular season games as a consolation. We're not doing that either. We're not winning World Series championships, obviously. And if you're not going to be a part of the postseason, there is nothing to root for. So in terms of what Brian Cashman's going to be bringing to the table, he needs to be putting better players on the field. Whether he's spending money or he's cashing in his prospects, doesn't matter who you want him to trade. He's got to find a way to put the right combination together and put talent on the field. Right now, you've got Josh Donaldson, who's essentially a 38-year-old middle-aged man playing. He's playing at third base. Okay. You had IKF all over the field. We don't know where he's going to play. Center field, left field, just running down balls. He didn't know what was going on out there, right? Obviously not a great option for a team that wants to be a contender. Aaron Hicks was on the field, who eventually we ended up getting rid of on his $70 million deal, okay? So we're sitting there looking at this roster and thinking, there's no possible way, when there's no prospects on the field currently that really the Yankees have developed, that Brian Cashman should believe that he should hang on to any prospect long term. He should be looking at ways to cash in the guys that he has and finding proven talent. And a lot of people just don't believe Ohtani can be traded. You're actually an optimist, which you've actually talked about. You think that Ohtani potentially could be traded. And I kind of agree with you, because if you really think about it, Ohtani can only really resign with like one, maximum like 4 teams. Is he even thinking about signing with what? Mariners, Yankees, Dodgers, and maybe Mets if they go like 100 million over?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like, if that's the case, you're the field of who actually can put together a trade, you're not going to have to blow them away. You just have to give them great prospects. And I feel like all of those teams have great prospects. It's just a matter of who wants to take the risk. And maybe Brian Cashman losing games is enough motivation to take that risk.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And I just think that, there comes a point you can say, oh, well, Cashman wouldn't do that. Cashman wouldn't do that. But there comes a point where, when your job is on the line and, there's a lot of, when it comes to general managing, there is ego involved. I just had Kyle Sloter, who's playing the NFL, and he's playing the USFL and XFL. I had him on yesterday, and he actually made a really great point. Is when you look at, say, like football, he's like, do you know why Bill Belichick, why those first round picks are busts that he drafts, and why it doesn't matter that they're busts and why he continued to win? It's because while he is the general manager, he puts the best guys on the field because he is the GM, and the GM is ahead of the manager. The GM is ahead of the head coach. And so Brian Cashman, we always hear like, oh, well, Brian Cashman's limited to what Hal will do. And, I'm not saying that's not true, but Brian Cashman's ahead of Aaron Boone right now. So he's very important the rest of the year to right this ship. And going out and getting, Sean Casey, we both like that move. We talked about it on Kick. It was a good move, I think, but you can't just leave it at that. You can't just be like, Dylan Lawson was the reason we were so bad. We've talked about it. When you really think about it, this team just is not that great. You said it on MLB Network yourself. When your team is riding on one player, and when that player goes down, you are not the same team. I'm sorry, like, you're not a good baseball team. And I know it sounds weird to say just adding Ohtani would change that, but if you actually know who Shohei Ohtani is, he's 2 players in one. So you're getting a top 3 pitcher, and you're putting him next to the guy who just started the American League All-Star game in Garrett Cole, and you're putting him next to the best hitter after Ohtani and Aaron Judge. So you have the 2 best combinations that you could possibly have in the major leagues. Maybe the argument would be Acuna long-term over Judge, but you see my point. So, like, look, I've said this. I'm a prospect hugger. Okay. I love the prospects. I've always been about that. But this is different. This isn't getting Juan Soto, despite the fact he's 23, 24 years old. Soto's not hitting 300, 32 home runs, and up there for Cy Young Award winner. And that's what really separates this from being a every season trade. We get a guy like this and just a once in a generation opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, we also have to look at the construction of the Yankees right now. And Anthony Rizzo is actually not having as good of a year as many of us thought he would. He got off to a pretty good start, and he really hit a rough patch. But the Yankees need that devastating left-handed bat. It's the reason why Juan Soto is considered also a fit with the Yankees, is that they need that at Yankee Stadium. You're talking about Shohei Ohtani. You're talking about the hitter who's going to be planted right behind Aaron Judge, offered as protection. So when Aaron Judge does return this season, of course, if that happens, you're talking about the most devastating 1-2 punch in Major League Baseball. So now that you have that, you also have to look at what he's doing on the other side of the field. You're talking about the New York Yankees, who are, you can say that Nestor Cortez is struggling this year, hasn't pitched well. You can say that Luis Severino is a player that the New York Yankees, not only the Yankees, the fan base, but the staff has to believe that he's probably on his way out the door in New York. And if that is going to transpire, they have to fill somebody in those shoes. What you saw last year with Monty, when they went up and got Montes, they essentially said, we no longer need this asset. We're bringing in somebody new. Well, obviously, when you're bringing in Shohei Ohtani, it's a much more reliable asset. You can assume he's going to be the 2 behind Garrett Cole. Sometimes he's going to be our ace. And that is a fantastic thing. So right now, the Yankees need a multitude of things. They need a reliable arm in the rotation, and they need a left-handed bat. You can get it in one player. And in my estimation, if the Yankees are going to trade a ton of prospects, right, to go get Shohei Ohtani, what better motivation do the Yankees need other than the fact that you just traded in all your prospects to re-sign and be the highest bidder this offseason? In my opinion, there's no possible way that you're going to trade a Jason Dominguez or any other prospect that is highly touted in this organization and then let the Dodgers or Mets outbid us. No. I think Hal Steinbrenner, if that happened, if Brian Cashman made this move, I believe that Hal Steinbrenner would say there's no possible way I'll let anyone outman me.
Yeah. And if Shohei decides to go where there's less money, then okay, but you're not going to get outbid. And I agree with that.
No.
I think at that point, you have to know how massive this move would be. New York obviously has had the likes of Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, etc. I mean, the list just goes on, right? Going out and getting a superstar in Reggie Jackson. I mean, like, they've done this stuff before, but not on this level. And so when I look at this is not Soto last year, but this is what we were talking about off air. I think this is realistic, Gary. This is not a pipe dream. We didn't just bring it up just because we didn't have anything to talk about, because trust me, if you guys have tuned into our kick streams, we don't run out of things to talk about. But,
no,
what it comes down to with this, Gary, and the reason why we're talking about this, the reason why I'm optimistic is because, one, I don't think only just threw that out there. I think there's some stuff there. Jeter just dropped the Shohei Ohtani stuff like right after the All-Star game in front of everybody. So I think that was honestly to get a little bit like get Cashman in that, like kick him into gear. But also probably because, he still talks to the organization. I'm sure he heard some things. And maybe it's like, hey, Jeter, you mind like just throw in a little thing in there? I mean, you're going to be, I wouldn't be surprised. But here's the thing and why it's possible. He's 29, okay? So he's not young. He's not old, but he's not young. He's not 24-year-old Juan Soto. That's going to command a hefty price. And he doesn't have any control. So when you don't have control and he's 29 years old, now that price is going to go down a little bit. So when people talk about this being an astronomical, price, I don't agree. I think the Yankees can get him without giving up Volpe,